Hello everyone, I'm Ben, Customer Support Manager at Polyquark, and in a minute I'm going to show you how to use our software WrapStyler to create a cutting pattern for the car floor mat we've just scanned with Shining 3D Scanner. But first, a quick word of introduction. Polyquark is a French company, founded in 1999, and its main activity is to develop WrapStyler, which is a 3D to 2D flattening software. Development of WrapStyler began in the early 90s, even before Polyquark was founded, and it has been in development for 30 years now, and we are still in a continuous process of research and development. New versions of the software are released twice a year at least, with corrections, improvements, and new features. A lot of these features are implemented following requests by our users. WrapStyler is used to create flat 2D patterns starting with 3D shapes for cutting, sewing, or other applications. It is distributed all around the world by our partner Shining 3D, and it's used in a lot of different industries like orthopedics, composite, upholstery, architecture, inflatable structures, and of course transportations like here. In transportation, it can be used for a lot of things. To create patterns for seats, to create composite parts, to wrap dashboards, or even to create patterns for adhesive film protection, and of course, to create floor mats like we are going to see today. So let's dive into it. This is WrapStyler. You can see here on this welcome screen the latest projects I've worked on. And I will start a new project by clicking on New. I'm using the Standard edition. 4 editions are available, starting with the Entry. Then you have the Standard, the Pro, and finally the Imagine. On the left side of the screen, you have the 3D view, or 3D space. And on the right side, this is the 2D view. You can create several pages in the 2D view, but for now, there is only one. This is where the patterns will be added once they are created. So let's start by importing the scan. I click here, and as you can see, several formats are accepted. But we mostly use OBJ and STL. OBJ is interesting because it allows to keep the texture of the object, which can be useful in some cases to serve as a guide to place the cutting lines. Here is our scan. You can see that the scanner perfectly captured the details, even the small bumps of the carpet. The process in that case is very straightforward, very simple, and very fast. First, I'm going to draw curves where I want to cut. This is usually the longest step. Then I'll cut and flatten to create the patterns. And finally, I will export. So, the curves first. To draw the curves, WrapStyler comes with several tools. We will mostly use the Create Curves tool here, but you can also choose to place curves thanks to the Cutting Plane tool right there. This tool has been improved in the latest version of WrapStyler, and as you can see, it allows to quickly draw a straight line. You can even rotate it or move it directly with your mouse. for the rest of the drawing, I will use the Create Curves tool. With that tool, you can draw directly on the surface of the mesh like this. I will come back to adjust some of the points later. I can even draw a rectangle on this part here, like this. So, in a few minutes, my curves are drawn. I will just use the Move Points tool to adjust the drawings here and there. And that's it. So, obviously, I'm not an expert when it comes to car floor mats, so maybe I did not place the points and curves where they should be, but for the sake of this demonstration, this will do. Now I can cut the mesh along the lines I created using the Cutting tool here. The duration of the calculation can vary depending on the power of your computer and on the density and the quality of the mesh. The cutting process is done. You can see that the mesh has been separated in several parts with different colors. I will keep the useful ones. I will revert the selection and delete the other ones. Before flattening, I like to rename the parts in what we call the 3D Properties window. This is mostly useful in big projects with a lot of parts. But now, if I open the Project Explorer, my parts have a proper explicit name. You also can see that the original part is still here, but it has been hidden. So if I want to go back and try another way of cutting, I can easily do so. For now, I can select the two parts I'm interested in and use the flattening function. And in a few seconds, the patterns are created and displayed here on the right in the 2D view. Right after this step, we want to check for deformations, just to see if the patterns will work before actually cutting the floor mats. This will avoid to waste material. WrapStyler can display a colored map of the deformations. Green is okay. Red parts will be stressed, and blue parts mean that there will be an excess of material. It may wrinkle. Here, almost everything is green. The only red and blue we see are due to the carpet texture bumps. But just to be sure, I can export a feasibility report to PDF. In this report are mentioned the deformation amounts. We can check them and see if they fit our quality standards and the amount of deformation the material can withstand. I will show you quickly a more obvious example of deformations here. You can see on this example that the deformations are strong in the corners. So unless I use a very flexible material, the patterns probably won't work. To make them doable, I would need to add cutting curves, probably around the corners. This would reduce significantly the amount of deformations, as you can see here. But back to our project. The only thing left to do now is to export. So here in the 2D view, we only need to create a cutting type page like this and to import the patterns. We also can, if needed, add a bit of extra material around the patterns. In sewing, it's called a seam allowance, but in the software we call that a flap. So if you want to add, let's say, a 10 millimeters offset, for example, you can do so thanks to the flaps tool palette here. Then we can export. Most of the time, our users prefer to use either DXF AAMA, which is a standard format used by cutting machines, or simply PDF. PDF is well known, well supported, and you can even have several layers, like you can see here, even in Acrobat Reader. the DXF AAMA has a lot more options. For example, let's say I want to cut circles to add clips or retainers later to fix the mat on the car floor. I can add points in the 3D view, like this. And you can see that they are automatically added at the corresponding spot in the 2D view. Now I can select an option in the DXF AAMA export settings to cut circles or to draw them with the marker tool of the machine where these points are located. There you have it. In a few minutes, we created flat 2D patterns starting from a 3D scanned car floor mat. Besides being fast, this process is also simple. One of the advantages of WrapStyler is that it's quite easy to learn. No need to be an engineer, even if some of our users are engineers, as it's also used by seamstresses or protection film installers, for example. So the training is very short, like between half a day and 2 days, depending on the edition. But here, with the standard edition, it would take between half a day and 1 day maybe. So, you save time, you save money also, thanks to the feasibility report and the deformation simulation that prevents you from wasting material. You even save space. You don't have to store paper or cardboard patterns. Everything is digitalized. And another advantage is that WrapStyler can produce patterns for a number of applications in the automotive field. So you can use it for several things, like seats, composite parts, PPF, film, etc. Before concluding this demonstration, of course, we could have chosen a different way to cut our floor mat, and we could have obtained more complex results. Here are a few tests I realized on the same basis. And you can see we can create assembly notices or even use texture if needed. For this, you would need the Pro version though. Well, thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I think now is the time to ask them.